Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton have taken part in a heated third debate in which the leaders called each other liars in the nastiest debate yet. The pair engaged in a bitter row over campaign truths. Joining us live with more analysis is our political contributor, Chris Uhlmann. Chris, of course, you've watched and been in the room. You've been the one asking questions for many of these leaders' debates over the years. What did you make of the tone and substance of the one we saw last night?
Yeah, well, actually, if you go back to the one that I was involved in for 9 last time round, I thought the tone and substance was probably a little bit more scrappy that time round when they really did get stuck into each other. There were a few instances, of course, where they traded some pretty significant barbs. Calling someone a liar is actually a big deal when you're talking about two political candidates who both want to be leaders. One is the Prime Minister, one hopes to be the Prime Minister. So, yeah, I thought actually it was a very good debate. They covered a lot of ground, but I've shaded it again to Anthony Albanese, and based on just the fact that he had a sentence that he could put, 2 sentences in fact, that he could put together, which was no one left behind, no one held back, as to being his philosophy. And I think that, you know, to me, Peter Dutton is trying to straddle a couple of things. He's trying to straddle between the teal seats and the outer urban areas of Australia. And I think that's creating real difficulty for him in trying to get a message that's clear enough that will be palatable enough for both. And I don't think that you can craft that kind of message. So I think he finds himself betwixt and between at the moment. It shows. And I also think that the Labor Party campaign has been much, much better, so much more professional than the coalitions.
So, Chris, in political commentary, we talk a lot about having momentum in election campaigns, and sometimes in campaigns that swings back and forth between the leaders. Now, with pre-polling underway, do you think that momentum that you're alluding to before from Anthony Albanese, can that change from this point, do you think?
Well, Ash, you watch this stuff as closely as I do, and we know that it's been all one way. Essentially, the coalition peaked well before this election campaign, and it didn't have a policy platform in place that had articulated much beyond nuclear energy and the fact that it wanted to do something about cost of living, but we weren't really quite sure what. So the coalition came into this campaign ill-defined. Now, in an era where people aren't really paying attention, I think that you needed to lay a few stakes in the ground very much earlier than they did. So all the momentum has been one way. Now, can that stop and can that turn around in the next week? Well, of course, anything could happen, but nothing compelling has been done by the coalition to make that happen. And again, with this defence policy, well, what we're seeing is it's outbidding the Labor Party, but the Labor Party's biggest line in this campaign has been around about the spending of the coalition and where cuts may well come from. So that may just add to that, because the problem we've had from both major parties is they haven't had the compelling case as to why we need this defence spending. There is a really compelling case, but both major parties are now concerned about it offending China, and the reason they're concerned about that is because of large constituencies of Australian Chinese in seats like Bennelong that they don't want to offend. That makes making a case against China a very difficult one in this day and age.
Both of the major parties, of course, like to talk about keeping Australia safe. Realistically, when you look at the defence budget, what proportion of GDP needs to be allocated to defence spending, do you think, in order to do that?
Well, Ash, if we were looking at the scenario in which Australia now stands, which is a Trump White House and a very aggressive Xi Jinping, then way more than what we are spending now, because the worst case, reasonable scenario is the United States is not necessarily coming to our aid should the worst happen. And I don't think that Australia's in any threat of imminent invasion. But what did we see just before this campaign? Chinese warships lapped Australia, and Australia was unable to keep pace with its own navy. What do the Chinese know after that? They know that we are unable to circumnavigate our own country. That is an indictment of where we now stand in defence. So 2.3%, 3%, well, all of this stuff is, again, over the horizon. The circumstances are dire now. The spending needs to come now. And in order to prepare the population for that spending, you have to make the case as to why these are really dangerous times. And people keep saying that they are, but they're not talking about what is the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is certainly China. And now it's also our major ally that we might need to fight alone.
We are seeing these live pictures of the opposition leader, Peter Dutton. He's in Perth. We heard from our reporter, Ruben Spargo, a little earlier that he is there in Belmont in Perth at a defence industry company. He's doing a tour there, you can see, Andrew Hastie there, the Shadow Defence Minister. Also Linda Reynolds, the former Defence Minister behind him, and the Liberal Senator Michaela Cash too. We will be hearing a news conference from him shortly, so we'll take you back there live as soon as that happens. But Chris, in that news conference, Peter Dutton will no doubt be asked why he's waited so long to announce this defence policy. You talked about making the case. Is it a mistake to hold these big announcements back until the final run of the campaign, or is this strategic to do this after pre-polling has already begun?
Oh, yeah, Ash, and you know this because these are the sorts of things that we talk about. What are the big equities, if you like, that each political party had? Well, the big equities always for the coalition were national security and economic management. Now, it basically trashed its record for economic management during COVID, which is why I think it flounders on that front now and is now engaged into spend-a-thon with the Labor Party and can't make a case as to why you need to rein in some government spending, which clearly does need to be reined in. So that's one of their equities which has been trashed. The second one is national security. Now, they really should have had a policy out sometime last year and been talking to it at every single stage where there was a proof point of the real issues that we had. And no bigger proof point could have been drawn than when those Chinese Navy ships were lapping the country. Now, if you'd been making the case for a long time, saying that the defence spending was underdone, you could have said then, the Albanese government says that we have a really good relationship with China now. Well, the last time that we saw a non-allied force firing weapons off the east coast of Australia was when? Was in the Second World War when the Japanese were doing it. What was the message that was being sent by the Chinese? It is that we can come here anytime that we want and you can do nothing about it. It was a demonstration of force. It was gunboat diplomacy. And the Prime Minister tried to shrug it off and pretty much was allowed to shrug it off because the case hadn't really been made by the coalition. So from my point of view, I think that what the coalition is doing is good. It's just doing too little, too late.
Yeah, missed opportunity, no doubt about it. Chris Uhlmann, really appreciate your analysis as always with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ash.